Okay, great. You should have it.
Okie dokie. Time to share. All right, shares are done. Give me 1 minute. I'll be right back and we'll get started. All right, sir. Whenever you're ready.
And take it, Greg.
Welcome, everyone. It is 6:20 on Monday night. You're listening to the 215th installment of the Age Out Angels Radio Hour, right here on www.hamiltonradio.net Channel 2. I'm your host, Greg Rapport. If you're new to the show, I'm the founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. We provide one-to-one mentors to vulnerable youth for the purpose of coordinating the care and services that they need to thrive. We try to help young people avoid some of the horrible pitfalls that they're likely to face when they don't have a proper safety net. And this program is brought to you every week at the same time, courtesy of Doc G, William Saunders, Ruben Rodriguez, and all the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. Ruben is on the big board tonight. Robin is producing. So good to have both of you with me. And so good to have all of you listening from your computers or in your cars in New Jersey, around the country, and even beyond the country. Now, please take a moment. If you're looking at us on Facebook or YouTube, hit all the buttons for me, please. We need you to like and subscribe and share, because this is relevant to everyone in your world. These topics, actually, there are two main ones tonight, apply to every geographic region, wherever you live. This needs to be shared. So please share what you're hearing right now. If you want to know about child welfare, if you want to know about how to make communities better, this is where you come to get the whole truth. And I promise what you'll hear tonight is not going to be on the nightly news. The only place you can get it, right here. I have two very special guests tonight from the United Way of Greater Mercer County. We have President and CEO Sandra Toussaint-Burgher. And from ELO Consulting, we have the company's founder, Christopher Kuhn. Later in the show, we're going to continue with more examples of, well, how the powers that be try to use racial division and racial tension to divide and conquer us as a voting public. It's absolutely diabolical. It's hard for me to say the word. And Clara Ross may be joining us for that later on. I also need to catch up on a story we just didn't get to last week about anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. So let's get right to it. A very interesting parallel between tonight's guest, if both of you don't mind me making this observation. And that is, I mean, you're in very different pursuits. Christopher, you help businesses grow. And Sandra, you run a large portion of the United Way organization in New Jersey. So what could possibly be the Venn diagram that you share? And the answer is that both of you are bringing something of incredible value to offer, I think, somewhat different segments of our listening audience. For example, the United Way offering free tax prep, among other things, but free tax prep is what we're selling right now, right? Free tax prep has, it has a value that we'll discuss in a minute. You can put a dollar amount on it, right? And employee retention credits, that's like free money for nonprofit organizations. And nonprofit I can tell you for a fact, they need the juice. So both of these fall under the heading of absolute no-brainers. If you listen to the show tonight and you fit the profile, then you got to drink the Kool-Aid. And I didn't do that just for the mixed metaphor. I did it because it's true. You have to do it. So let's start with the United Way. Sandra, welcome back to the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. It's been a while.
It has been, Greg, and thank you so very much for inviting me to come on. Hopefully your 2023 is off to a good start. I don't know if I could say that since we are approaching the last day or so of January.
It's quite all right. I take Happy New Year at any time. Anytime. So now tell us about this tax preparation program that you're launching.
So we're excited to bring our free tax preparation services to residents in the Mercer County area. And really, it's any individual or family whose household income is less than $65,000 a year can go to a number of sites throughout the county. And actually, our United Way office is one of the sites where they can get their taxes done for free. We've been doing this program for more than 10 years in partnership with the IRS. Again, it's a number of sites throughout the county, and this is such a valuable service. I would think that, individuals, families, we work hard, right? And this is an opportunity to keep more of your hard-earned dollars, and United Way can certainly help you with that. Throughout the sites, all you need to do is come and bring your paperwork. Some sites is by appointment, some sites is by walk-in, some sites it's evening, during the day. It certainly varies. There's information on our website. Now is the time to start getting your financial documents in order and get your taxes done for free, as opposed to going to like a paid preparer.
So to start with, you don't have to pay the amount that you'd have to at a paid preparer, and that's just for openers. In your experience, I'm assuming you've done this in the past, right? This is not the first year, is it?
No, we've been doing this program for more than 10 years. So it's free tax preparation services. We also call it VITA, VITA, which is an acronym that stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. And you're absolutely right. It's absolutely free. So all you have to do is go to our website or call our office to find out what's the nearest site availability, and you can get your taxes done. And we've been doing this every year.
Yes. Okay. So my question to you is, in your years of experience, do the people who come to you really understand what the tax is, and that they usually have refunds coming, like money due to them? Do they sense that? Do they understand how the tax system works?
Well, they understand the importance of taxes. They are grateful to have a refund. I want to say for the clients that we serve, 99% of them do get a tax refund. Depending on the year, the average refund can be anywhere between $1,200 to $1,400. And for a family that's struggling, right? So when you get this windfall of cash, I'm telling you, they're not going to Disney World. They're not buying a flat screen TV. How do we know this? Is because we survey our families, and we see repeat families year after year, repeat clients year after year. And you'll be surprised, many of them are just using those refunds to offset any holes or gaps in their family budget, right? And so that's money for food, money for rent. The cars, transportation is big in this area, right? So that is a challenge. They need to fix the car so they can go to work or go to school or buy books for college and things of that nature. It's the average necessities that all of us utilize. That's what they're using the tax refunds for. For medication, finally, they can get that.
Goodness, I think of a tax refund as, like found money. You can blow this, but in real life, what you just described was spending that same tax refund like 4 times, right? That's how big the need can be in certain situations. I find, more and more people in the age group that I work with, which would be like 16 to 24, say, they say that they don't trust the government. Like they don't want the government to know anything about them. Is that something that you, I don't know, have an answer for? Like, what do you do when a kid is standing in front of you and you could get him a $600 refund in about 15 minutes, and he says, I don't want no part of that. I don't trust the government.
Well, that's a hard conversation to have, and I want to say for us at United Way, it's really about access and equity, right? And so, how do we make sure that the resources that are available, A, you know about it, B, is that we provide assistance for you, and so you can benefit, right? And so certainly, we know there are some challenges, there are some systemic issues and problems and things of that nature, but still there are some benefits that you may be entitled to or not aware of, right? And so the free tax preparation services is one of the programs that we encourage individuals and families, if they fall under the income requirement, so below 65,000, right? And you'd be surprised how many in the state of New Jersey fall under that category, can get their taxes done for free. And so that's the extra $600 that you need for college or for basic needs or things of that nature. And one thing that we do, so while we have a captivated audience, they're coming in to get their taxes done for free, but we also have volunteers there, staff members there, depending on schedule on sites, really try to assess, well, what else can we help you with, right? So if you're coming to get your taxes done, chances are you need other services, right? And you need other resources. So that's an opportunity that we take and say, do you have health insurance? If you don't have health insurance, certainly United Way staff members can assist you in signing up for health insurance. Do you need help with LIHEAP application? So that's utility application. Do you need help with rental assistance? Do you need help with food SNAP applications? Do you need a financial coach and things of that nature. Some of the resources we have in our wheelhouse, and others, because it's United Way, we have connections to other community organizations. So we're happy to not only make the referral, but also follow up. And so that's the conversations that we're trying to have, whether it's a young person 16 years old, a young person 25, or even seniors. So if you look at the demographics who actually take advantage of our free tax preparation services, so certainly we do see a lot of seniors, but we really see a lot of single parents, right? So female head of households. And so that's a large chunk of who we see. We also see Spanish-speaking families, right? And so where English is a second language or a third language and so forth. So that's another lion's share in terms of the population that's taking advantage of this service. I mean, the free tax preparation service, I'd like to say, is a way that people come in, access resources, learn about us, and we connect them to other things as well.
Providing a very valuable service while leading them towards other things that you know half the people who come in the door are going to need. Mm-hmm. What should they bring with them when they come to you to have their taxes done? What do they need to have with them?
So certainly ID, that is a must to get your taxes done. And it's not a United Way rule per se, it's the IRS, right? So we do this with the IRS. So the IRS says you need to have ID, proper ID. So social security card, driver's license if you have that, other government issued IDs. We do see people with I-10s and so forth. And so, and then of course your W-2s, and other proof of income, right? And so most of the folks that we see, it's pretty much their basic source of income is from work, right? So we're not really seeing individuals with investments, coming in, and that is rare. And so more details.
You will this year if you've been looking at the market. You'll be.
Oh, well, that's another conversation, Greg. But certainly if you go on our website, you'll see there's more details in terms of what to bring, including our phone number, how to make an appointment. Our website, for those of you who don't know, United Way of Greater Mercer County website is www.uwgmc.org. So for individuals,
I just want to repeat it slowly. It's United
Sure.
Way of Greater Mercer County, so it's UWGMC.org. Okay.
.org. Yeah. I always say, GMC like the car. So
that's good. I like that. Yeah.
GMC like the car, and then .org. And for individuals who are much more comfortable or who are tech savvy, there's opportunities for them to do taxes on their own. There's also My Free Taxes. So United Way certainly makes that available as well. So you can go to My Free Taxes. Again, you have a whole gamut of individuals who are familiar with the process and kind of saying, oh, I don't need you to walk me through it or hold my hand. I know what I need to do. So they can go that route. Or if you want to sit down with a certified IRS volunteer, certainly you can do that as well.
Excellent. Sandra, if you can hang with us for just a few more minutes, because I want you to hear what Christopher has to say.
All right.
You are actually his target.
Am I? I hope that's a good thing, Christopher.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
It doesn't get better.
You're using the word target. Better. I don't know how to take it.
No.
To be his target,
Prospect.
No.
Prospect.
Okay.
Christopher, you also have an offer to the listeners of this show that if they qualify, they should not walk away from. Tell us what employee retention credits are.
Right. Thanks, Greg. So employee retention credits, it was introduced by the CARES Act. It's very similar to, like all the other government programs and government money we're getting during this pandemic, like PPP, EIDL. It's very similar. It's out there for companies and to really maintain their payroll during this pandemic. So the government, it's a way of the government to pay back. It's not just for nonprofits, it's for for-profit companies as well. But it really is very lucrative for those companies that were operationally impacted. So there's two ways you can qualify for an employee retention credit. Very similar to the second round of PPP, if you had a reduction in revenue in any one quarter, and for nonprofits, that's obviously money raised from grants, fundraising, and what have you. If you had a revenue reduction from 2021 to 2020 of 50% in any one quarter, 2020 to 2019 in any one quarter, you can be eligible, okay? In 2021, that reduction drops to 20% per quarter. But even if your revenues increased, you can qualify for the ERC, even if you were operationally impacted. There's a number of nonprofits, I'm sure, where fundraising events were canceled. I got to believe that nonprofits would be very, very lucrative for ERC because basically things were shut down. All kind of in-person events, in-person fundraising was shut down. So this credit really could be very, very strong for nonprofits in that way. And it could be up to $26,000 per employee per year. So you'd qualify for 20 and 21. That's 6 quarters. You do the math. If you have even a 50 employee company, could be quite a benefit.
Absolutely. And Chris, you know what, I was thinking of all the different nonprofit organizations and people who run them that I know. And I mean, organizations like the United Way, we would assume you have a grant specialist, you know, maybe a person whose job is to research that sort of thing. But as you get into the smaller companies that are just, you know, running on skin and bones to, you know, to a very large extent, even if the company had somebody whose job it was to do that, all they have to do is get sick, you know, or not be available for some reason, or leave because their mother has COVID, God forbid. But you know what I'm saying is, like, that person goes and then suddenly there's nobody there for a long time. And so it is very possible that in this nonprofit world in which we navigate, that there are a lot of companies out there that look at the definition that says this was to keep your employees during the pandemic and say, well, now it's too late.
Absolutely.
The pandemic's over, right? So why are we talking
right.
about this now?
Exactly. Yeah. So this will still be out there for a while. It'll start to roll off sometime in 2024, but there's still plenty of time to look into it. Now, all it really takes is just a free 30-minute Zoom call to really dig down in how each nonprofit was operationally impacted. So ELO partners with somebody who calculates the credit, and it's not a quick process. So that's the downside, is that we sit with you for 30 minutes. We understand how you're operationally impacted. Then our partners kind of, you know, go through and really qualify and see if we give you a ballpark. If we feel there's enough there to qualify for a credit, they'll tell you. If they feel there's not, they'll tell you that also, and then there's no point in pursuing. But if there's a credit out there, we've seen some nonprofits out there get credits between $1 and $2 million, and I'm sure some of the larger ones get above that. My partner does, as far as cost, charge a contingency fee, but let's say you're getting a credit of $1 million. The contingency fee is 15%. And again, this partner that I partner with is really one of the top-notch firms that's been out there for 40 years, calculating credits for other natural disasters like Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Katrina. So they take that contingency fee knowing that they're the experts in the industry. So if you get a credit of $1 million, you pay the 15% contingency fee, you're still getting $850,000. That's how I look at it. Still free money, $850,000.
You get $100, you pay the 15, and you still walk away with 85.
Still walk away with 85, absolutely.
That's right. And you can still almost have a nice dinner on 85.
Almost. Not in New York.
So, Sandra, just out of curiosity, had you heard about these before? Do you know? Is this something?
Yes, I have heard about this before, and I want to say United Way of Greater Mercer County. Certainly, we were one of the not-for-profit organization who took advantage of the ERC, and as far as I know, there's quite a few nonprofits in our area who did the same. And to be honest, and just as Christopher alluded to, nonprofits during the pandemic, we were hit with something unforeseen, right? So last minute cancellation, regardless of the size of your organization or your budget and things of that nature, we had to pivot, right? And especially if you're in the health and human services area, there was more demand for your services, right? And so you're dealing with less employees. How are you going to keep the doors open in response to need and demand? And then here you have the ERC.
Yep. Yeah.
So that was like, seriously, a savings grace.
Really
and
was.
So I want to say for organizations who have not done it, and you are eligible, what are you waiting for? Really?
Yeah.
Because that was very, very, very helpful. And funders understand, right? Because they get it, because funders don't cover everything, right? And so this is certainly a valuable resource. You don't want to leave money on the table.
No question. Well said, Sandra. Thank you.
I think that's.
I know you should put me on a commercial now. You see that?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Christopher. How do people get in touch with you?
Right. So I own, as you said, starting off the show, a company called ELO Consulting. And incidentally enough, I just told my daughter that I'm on the show, but she was listening to the radio side, and ELO actually happened to be playing right when I told her I was on. So I hope Jeff Lynne doesn't sue me. Anyway, you can get in touch with me either my cell phone number at 609-468-6277, or my email address, which is CKUHN@ELOconsultingllc.com. I'll set you up with my partner for the free 30-minute Zoom call, and we'll take it from there. Let's hope we can get a lot of nonprofits some ERC credits out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on the show and sharing this. I'd like you to come back sometime. Let's see if we can keep this story alive a little while and promote the progress of people who are taking advantage of it, so that everyone understands that it's not something that other people get and they don't.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to, Greg. I appreciate it.
All right, pal. I know you have places to go. I'm going to let you go, and
Awesome.
I'll see you next time. All right?
Terrific,
Thanks.
Greg. Thanks so much, Sandra. Great work with the United Way. Great to meet you.
Thank you. Enjoy your evening.
You bet. You too.
Thanks. And thanks for sticking around, Sandra. I'm glad that you have the time to do that. Now, I want to pivot here and let people know that I just want you to understand that in the next segment, some of the topics that we're going to be going into can trigger deep feelings. Okay, and there's a new number, 988. And if anyone out there is thinking of, if this triggers any thoughts about harming yourself, or if you were thinking about harming yourself anyway, and do me one favor, please, and just pick up your phone and call 988. I think the best thing that a person can do in that situation is talk to someone who is trained to talk to them, because whoever you are, we like you better alive. Okay. I want to do this story first. This is from Olivia Sanchez. It's about a fellow named Oscar Santiago Perez. It says he's very tired. They are not tired because of their course load at the University of Florida or because of student government work. Santiago Perez said it's the barrage of anti-LGBTQ+ legislation, rhetoric, and violence that has intensified throughout the past year. He says these politicians, these people in power, just repeat these falsehoods and narratives that are actively harming our members of the community, Santiago said. In this year alone, state lawmakers have filed at least 340 anti-LGBTQ+ bills. That's according to the Human Rights Campaign. And at least 25 have passed. These include policies that would restrict queer and transgender people from accessing health care, It would limit educators from teaching about LGBTQ plus identities in schools and prevent athletes from playing sports on the team that corresponds with their gender identity. Beyond legislation, the United States Supreme Court hinted at potentially reconsidering the case that led to the constitutional right to same-sex marriage in 2015. Experts say LGBTQ plus college students are suffering from the national pileup of negativity. In a survey done in the fall of 2021 by the Trevor Project, about 2/3 of LGBTQ plus youth said that legislation targeting transgender people had negatively affected their mental health. The same was true for about 85% of trans and non-binary youth surveyed. And it's only intensified, actually, since the study was done. Brandon Wolf, a survivor of the 2016 Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida, said that the anti-LGBTQ plus legislation and rhetoric creates a toxic, hostile environment toward them that just does not allow them to be mentally, physically, emotionally present for education. When you tell young queer kids that there's something wrong with them because of who they are, or their identities are something to be hidden away, or that LGBTQ people are like a contagion or a virus that you're trying to eliminate, it becomes very difficult to them for them to unpack that when they get to college. Santiago Perez said that they're grateful to the University of Florida and Gainesville are overall pretty accepting towards LGBTQ plus people. But they were jarred and disheartened to learn the local Pride Center had been vandalized this fall when someone threw a rock through the window. Police are investigating it as a hate crime. It just shows that there's still hate within our community, even in what I would consider a pretty progressive city, Santiago Perez said. It's just a reminder for me and probably others to always be vigilant and to not let our guard down when it comes to protecting ourselves. Sandra, you know what I thought of when I read this article for the first time? There are two groups of people that have an extremely high suicide rate, and they are LGBTQ plus teenagers and police. Two absolutely unrelated pursuits, yet they both have the highest suicide rate. And for some bizarre reason, we're as a country so overwhelmingly against helping either. We're against fixing either. And I mean, that's the part of this whole thing that just doesn't make sense to me. When you realize that you have a segment of the population who you are basically torturing to the point where they kill themselves. You know, in the case of LGBTQ plus, it's just to survive high school. In the case of police, it's because what they see every day is horrible. You know, I mean, I know right now it's kind of weird to talk about police in light of current events, and we'll get to that too in just a minute. But you know, generally speaking, most of the police I've known in my life don't go out to kill people in the day. Of course, most of the police I've known have worked white neighborhoods, so I shouldn't speak thoroughly about that. But anyway, at the end of their careers, they kill themselves at an alarming rate. Which brings me to the subject of race. And this amazing article that is called Racial Resentment, the Insidious Force That Divides America. This is coming from the Berkeley News from the University of California, Berkeley. The article is written by Edward Lempinen. And he writes, it's easy to look back across decades to see the workings of stark racism in American political life. Mob lynchings and police killings, poll taxes, literacy tests imposed to prevent Black people from voting. Politicians of the 1950s and 60s aggressively defending segregation, and their more recent counterparts who use racially coded dog whistles, right, to help whip their base voters into action. Such aggressive, overt racism remains a force in American culture. Sometimes resonating across decades, even centuries, to shape race relations today. Two authors, David C. Wilson, Dean of the Goldman School of Public Policy at UC Berkeley, says that we need to be more aware of other, more subtle social dynamics that reinforce racial inequality and injustice. In a new book, Racial Resentment in the Political Mind, Wilson and co-author Darren W. Davis argue that many white people perceive that Black people, because of their race, unfairly receive enhancements that bring about racial equality, like scholarships, jobs and other advantages. Anxiety about the nation's increasing diversity and what it means is making those resentments more intense, the authors say. Those conflicts then play out in legislative bodies and courts. Indeed, the U.S. Supreme Court has just agreed to hear 2 cases that challenge affirmative action in university admissions. When policies aimed at producing racial equality and justice are proposed, the opposition is in part due to racism or prejudice, Wilson said in a recent interview. But the stronger factors are tied to uncertainty about how the policies will disrupt a way of life that most whites have learned to navigate and benefit from. Now, I'm going to editorialize here for just a moment because he's actually saying something that I've been saying for a long time. And that's why I like this article. But in a way, in the white community, it can actually run a little bit deeper because it's whites have learned to navigate and benefit from. A lot of them don't realize that that's what they've learned because they keep a lot of whites poor too. Okay? So what you have is a situation where there's a reasonable percentage of the white population that is struggling to make ends meet. Okay? And so that's what he's referring to when he says navigate and benefit from, because you'll see in a minute how it is actually possible for them to make ends meet, whereas in other communities it might not be. But they don't know that. And I'll go on to the article now. Rather than simply disliking African Americans or Hispanics, many white people also dislike distributing rewards or changing merit systems on the basis of a criterion they cannot benefit from. In that context, any racial progress today is perceived as coming at the expense of whites, even if it strengthens our democracy. If you don't pay attention to those psychological aspects of political decision-making, you'll miss the nuance of American politics, let alone the politics of race. Now, Wilson is a political psychologist. He assumed leadership at the Goldman School last July, serves as a professor of public policy. Davis is a political scientist at the University of Notre Dame, whose research has focused on public opinion and political behavior. Their book, released last month by the University of Chicago Press, brings years of research to bear on a host of political issues that affect racial justice. The deep, continuing impact of sympathetic racial inequality is a centuries-long, did I say sympathetic? I meant systemic racial inequality, is a centuries-long failure of the American ideal. But Wilson and Davis offer an innovative, nuanced look at the psychological and political forces in contemporary culture that at once reject racism and defend the status quo. In our era, Americans are constantly having to balance the psychological scales of racial justice in their daily lives, Wilson explained. That makes racial resentment almost inevitable. But he added, if one side of the scale wants to move while the other does not, it's impossible for change to happen. Sandra, it feels like making a left turn with the Titanic. It's a problem that runs so deeply. Culturally, it's like we just have no idea where to begin, and we're just when it comes to this topic, there's anarchy. Everybody's everywhere on it. People try to come up with reasons why everybody else is wrong or insane. And the point is that if you keep enough people poor long enough, they'll turn on each other. And that seems to be the game, that's being played right now. is when I think about trying to create inequality in a political environment, I think that Black people make up what they call like 12% of the population. So you can't move politics with 12%. You need a coalition of other people to join you. So if I'm a politician and I'm trying for that not to happen, then whatever I can do, to keep you separate. And the same is true of the anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. How are those things different when inequality is the central cog, of the action that a person takes? It really kind of boggles my mind, and it bothers me further when I think that race itself is just a social construct. It's nothing more. It's something people invented in order to have an order to maintain dominance, but it serves no purpose. There's no scientific reason to have races. Can't we made it up. I mean, we need to segregate people sometimes for different reasons. Like, for example, women's health is different than men's health. So we have to admit that there are men and women or biological differences or combinations of that. But we need to admit that because it's important, so that they get the right care. We have to separate children from adults. That makes sense, to divide people in that way in the right circumstance. There's no sensible reason to divide people by race. I think sometimes people who are exceedingly tall should really be given a little extra courtesy in an airline. Because every time I see a 6-foot guy get on the plane, I think, oh, he's about to have the worst 2.5 hours of his life. His knees are going to be up his chin the whole time. But you see what I'm saying, though. I mean, I'm making light of it clearly, but there are reasons to do certain things, to balance the scales, but there's no reason to divide it by race. No reason at all. So let's go on with the article, what racial resentment is and what it isn't. Centuries of slavery, Jim Crow laws, and other structural racism have imposed far-reaching costs on Black individuals and communities. What sets the current era apart, the author suggests, is wide acceptance among Americans that racism is wrong and harmful. But where blunt racial prejudice has faded, racial resentment is potent, but widely misunderstood. Prejudice and resentment are not synonymous, Wilson and Davis argue, and they are pointedly critical of the U.S. political science community for treating them as such. The concepts of racial resentment employed by researchers in the last 30 years don't explain today's prevalent on-the-ground racial resentment, whether among white or Black people. Wilson offers a more contemporary view. He says white racial resentment is reflected in the belief that race is an unworthy and disagreeable basis for determining merit. Such resentment toward Black people reflects a belief that African Americans are using race unfairly to gain status and material privilege in our society. Have you ever heard a phrase be twisted to fit a narrative more violently than that phrase? I mean, listen to the two phrases. A belief that race is an unworthy and disagreeable basis for determining merit. Yeah, it is. There's no merit that should be determined based solely on race, right? Then use that to come down like a hammer and say, and so that's why we shouldn't have affirmative action. Because of that. And it just doesn't make sense because of where our country's at. I see so many programs now for that are targeted at young people of low income, regardless of race, but young people of low income. And we can do everything that we can to help those people get an education and get them to the and give them self-esteem and give them teachers and mentors who look like them so they can look up to that image. We can give them all those things, okay? And then they graduate college and they're out into the work world. And life has got to hit them like a ton of bricks. It's got to. You know, because if you get all the way to there, and it's not easy to get all the way to there. I mean, come on, let's face it, the kids I work with, 3% graduate college. So 97 out of 100 don't even get to the place where they can now go out in the work world to be discriminated against. There has to come a point where you just throw up your arms and say, you know, how? How do I make this work in this country while someone's screaming in your ear, you should go back where you came from? You know, came from Trenton. Should I go back there? Okay. But it's just, all these things are just easy to be passionate about because they're based on vapor. These ideas of race being divided the way they are. I mean, they don't know what to do with me. I look white enough, I know, that's fine. But no, they don't know. There are books written about whether Jews are a race or a religion. I mean, whole books. And I will tell you that I've also seen whole books of people that were written by white people before genetic testing made all of this racial separation a moot point. But there were books written where I'll never forget one that measured the brains of white people and measured the brains of black people and showed with pictures that black people's brains were smaller than white people's brains, and therefore drew the conclusion that white people were superior. Now, I mean, today we know that that's borderline insanity, if not just downright stupid. Yet, like social media today, it was a book, it got published, I'm sure it was read in places where they said, aha, now we have the answer as to why we're superior. Good that we separated these races, because otherwise we wouldn't know. And it's all so wrong. It's just all so wrong. 3 factors that drive racial resentment. 1, deservingness. It's a simple, enduring, and erroneous American story. If you study hard, work hard, and live according to the values of the system, you'll get ahead. And if life is difficult, you have to be resilient. In that narrative about American values, if you struggle, if you fail, it's probably your own fault. Now, most white people oppose racism, Wilson said, but many of those same people are likely to mistrust or oppose robust programs to achieve more diversity in university admissions or workplace hiring, or to dramatically reform police practices, because they are perceived to come at the expense of white people and a way of life that doesn't need to change. They resent having to change in order to address a problem that they believe they did not create. Not my problem. For example, when you ask people to give up their property, their jobs, or their children's scholarships in order for there to be racial equality, Wilson said, they likely resist these ideas because they don't think it's fair that they have to give up something for somebody else to get something, especially if they believe they've worked hard for what they've received. But I'm editorializing now. Here's the rub. Here's the rub. The rub is we have $75 billion to send to Ukraine. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to do it, but when we need the money, it's there. Stop. We have to stop using money as a reason that we don't educate children. God, that is just the worst reason in the world. So there it is. That's where the races get pitted against each other, you see? Because the money's not there. And they say, okay, in the admissions process in the college, we're now going to have a black person come in, take a white person's place. Bang. Let's all butt heads over that. They give us the enemy, you see? They give us the enemy. And like suckers, we just buy into it. Just buy into it. When you poll the country, most people say, yeah, why should we have inequality? Why should women be paid 75% of what a man gets paid? Right? Why should every time a woman becomes the CEO of a company, there's a really good chance that that's a company that's on its way down badly. And when it fails, they go, oh my, look what happened. The self-fulfilling prophecy, women can't run a company. I mean, there have been volumes written about that. So I'm not making this stuff up. But, you know, why should that be? Why should a woman make 75% less than a man? Women are a 51% voting bloc in this country. They could kick ass any election, if they could just stop allowing themselves to be pitted against each other. Another reason is blame shifting. Imagine politically moderate white people who oppose racism, but hold traditional values about self-reliance and fairness. When policies propose increased funding for schools in predominantly black communities, or perhaps magnet school admissions using race, Wilson said they will give less weight to how the policy advances equality and more weight to their values. I was raised on those sort of traditional values, I guess you could say. And you know, having worked with foster children for as long as I have, I can tell you that those values are lovely, but in many, many cases, they just don't apply. They really don't. When you take low-income people, and I'm not going to divide it by race, I'm going to tell you, when you take low-income folks and they're on some form of public assistance, they used to call it welfare. The system is designed to make it very difficult for them to pull themselves out of that. I mean, you got to suffer all over again to get out of that. And of course, the people that I work with have suffered some form of trauma, in some cases, very deep childhood trauma. So thinking you can walk into there as the Great White Hope and say, no, I'm going to show you now how we built America, okay? We're going to work hard. We're going to pull up our bootstraps. And I don't care that you were starved and burnt with cigarettes and locked in a closet or any of that stuff. Forget about that, because it's all going to be good now. It just doesn't work. It's not practical. No one can walk away from that much trauma unaffected. It's not possible that you can look at that person and say, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You know who I found are the most successful children? And this is anecdotal, of course. The most successful are the ones who had a kind of innate intelligence and loved school. If school was their safe place, then they progressed through the system the way it forces you to progress. Because let's face it, if you're going to make money in this country, you got to go to school, you got to go to high school, you got to go to college, you have to do those things. That's how you get the higher paying job. That's how you become somebody's boss. Do you hate the boss? The way you become someone's boss is to play the system the way it's designed to be played. Okay? Giving you the opportunity to do that is just so frustrating that it doesn't guarantee that even when you get there, you'll have that chance. So you can't take those traditional American values. A person that I knew who grew up in foster care in the 1950s, and it was horrible. I mean, he lived a horrible life as a child. Grew up to be a major captain of industry, a major player on the national stage. And the world was set up in a way then that he actually had a fighting chance to do that. It's not set up like that now. For openers, he was white. For seconders, he lived in a town where there was plenty of jobs, plenty of opportunity, and he could walk to work. Transportation was never an issue. Where I grew up, transportation was never an issue. You didn't need a car. It didn't matter. You could get to where you needed to go. Not a problem. The world isn't built like that today. For people in low-income areas to even get out and find out what other jobs and careers might be out there, that requires a field trip. You can't just say to somebody, well, you know, there's a company here and they have 5 departments. They have a security department. They have an accounting department. They have a sales department. You can work in any of those. Somebody living in a low-income situation in the inner city has no idea what you're even talking about in that content. So, you know, by not recognizing that America has created a situation, and I'm not talking about slavery now, I'm actually talking about everything that came after slavery. We've created a situation where we've put a group of people who are basically low income in a box. We've made sure that an overwhelming percentage of those people are people of color. And we've said there, now I'm going to show you how to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And the only answer I can think of is, you can afford boots? Where did you get the boots from, man? That you can pull yourself up by the bootstraps. It just doesn't work. Well, that's all we have time for tonight, folks. We're going to go over this more and more and more because we have Black History Month coming up. And you know, we need to tell as many people as possible about this. We can't, this is not something that we can keep a secret. If you're still with me at this point in the show, I need you to share this, okay? I need you to seriously share this show. I need you to get it onto, get your friends and your people in your social media groups onto our YouTube channel, where this show will reside now forever, and start to get people to understand that the old arguments are either based on non-fact or are simply not applicable anymore. It can't work this way. It simply can't work this way, because what's happening is, this is what's destroying our culture. Not boys who want to be girls, okay? That's not what's destroying your culture. What's destroying your culture is people who want to step on the necks of other people and make sure they never get up. So on that happy note, goodness gracious, let me thank my guest, Sandra Toussaint, President and CEO. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, certainly I need to tune in more often. I could say that. And I want to say thank you so very much for inviting me. It's been a long time since I've been on the show. What we're trying to do is our part in, again, access and equity is what we're all about, and make resources available and try to help as many people as we can.
I know. And then in a place like the United Way, you just have to live above the fray. And just do that, create the access, because that's important. And so as long as you're doing that, you're doing something important, and you're part of the solution. And that
is our intent, especially since I've been at the helm at United Way. You know, some of the issues that you talked about, certainly issues that resonates with me, and certainly just want to make sure United Way is at the forefront in our geographic footprint, bringing equity to the table.
Absolutely a leader. Absolutely a leader. Thanks so much for coming on the show. And thank you all for listening at home. Can we make a date possibly to meet right here again next week around 6 o'clock? And it'll be, we'll have three shows in Black History Month. They give us the shortest month, right? And then they shove President's Day in the middle of it. So I only get to do 3 shows during Black History Month. But there'll be 3 good ones, I promise you. So meet me right back here next week. And in meantime, let's make this week the best week ever. Good night, everybody. Good night, Ruben. Good night, Robin.
Good night, Greg.
Hey, see you later,
Good night,
Greg.
Robin.
No one ever says good night, John Boy,
Be safe.
anymore.
Good night, John Boy. Good